Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. Alright, I want to continue our discussion on social issues and this subject of personhood and how it relates to the issue of abortion. Last time we discussed a little about some aspects that I think are helpful in defining what a person is. We also discussed how difficult it can be to define a person and to even know that personhood is something that exists or that is even an important topic to be discussing. And we said that there were two aspects that I really drew out that I think highlight what a person is. And that would be that they have the ability to choose, even against their own desires, the good of another. And then also a person has the ability to think in a purely abstract manner. Now that second point, I don't think I expounded on very much, what it would mean to think in a purely abstract sort of a way. And I think this actually becomes quite clear. You can think of things like pure mathematics, talking about various applications of calculus or differential equations or I don't know what set theory. All these sorts of things are what I would consider really good indicators that someone is a person if they can at least have the potential to grasp those sorts of things, barring any type of disability that would hinder them from thinking in those ways. Another example would be to distinguish between how animals, especially higher level animals, it's quite clear that they have imaginations. They can dream. That's probably the clearest point. You'll see a dog sleeping and they'll be like running in their sleep and like doing a little bark in their sleep. It's really cute. My dog used to do that when he was a puppy. I haven't seen him do it much anymore, but he did used to do that. So it's clear that at least higher order animals do have imaginations and they can think abstractly in the sense that they can think about things that aren't in front of them, right? But that's not pure abstraction. Pure abstraction would be thinking about something that is not just amalgamation of things that we see in the world, but like a unicorn, would be an example of this. That a unicorn isn't a pure abstraction. It's not. It's a combination of images that we have of a horse and a horn, like from a narwhal or something. So it's just like amalgamation of these things in our brain. And our brain mixes them together and through creativity creates something like that. I would argue that's not necessarily something that would define or distinguish a person from a non-person. Like I would be open to it, if somehow we would be able to figure out if, like very high order animals like apes were able to do things like that. Maybe we already have. I don't know. I haven't really kept up on the science on issues regarding those types of studies. So, but I don't see that necessarily as being a defining characteristic of a person. When I say purely abstract ideas or concepts, it would be thinking about things such as infinity. Infinity, I think, is a really good example, and this is actually the example that Blessed John Duns Scotus gives for the main attribute of God. He considers infinity to be the main attribute of God because infinity has no basis. We have no way of conceptualizing it in its actual form that relates to anything in the physical world. Even if I draw a line with two arrows on the end, that's not infinity. Even if I draw, the sideways 8, number 8, that's not infinity. If I draw a circle, that's not infinity. Infinity is just incredibly more than that. And the fact that we can even conceptualize such a term, I think, is actually a really good indicator that the human race could be considered, must be considered persons. Even things such as truth, goodness, or beauty, the transcendentals, at least Scotus doesn't consider to be the purest of abstractions. They're considered more, because we can relate truth in certain ways to experiences we have had. We can relate beauty to experiences we have had, and we can relate goodness to experiences we have had. So, like, they're not purely abstract types of concepts, but he argues that infinity is, and I think I agree with him. So, if something can have pure abstract concepts like infinity, then I think as long as they can have the potential to do that, right, they could be considered persons. And the reason I say as long as they have the potential to do that is because of there are many human beings out there with certain disabilities, intellectual disabilities in particular, that would hinder them from thinking about these sorts of purely abstract concepts. But that doesn't mean that they don't have the potential to think of those things. It's not like they're supposed to not be able to think about those things. It would be a defect that's not allowing them to think about those things. It's not something in their nature, right? It's something extrinsic to their nature, imposing upon their nature, that makes them not able to utilize those fullest activities of their nature. Okay, now I'm getting really kind of in the weeds philosophically here, and I apologize if I'm making it, if I lost some people there. But I hope I'm conveying this in a way that makes sense. Because certainly we don't want to go down the road of saying that human beings with disabilities, particularly intellectual disabilities, are not persons. That definitely lends itself to some undesirable conclusions, I would say. The same conclusions that the Nazis came to during and previously to World War II. And not that that's an argument against saying that persons with intellectual or even physical disabilities are not persons. I would say an argument against that would be the consequences of that, which would be that if they're not persons, then by most accounts we can dispose of them. They're disposable, and I don't think people would. That would be a horrible world to live in. And I guess again, that still is not an argument for it. And maybe it's just something that's like a brute fact that I can't accept. Right? I need to be able to accept that persons with intellectual disabilities are still persons. And I don't think I'm outside of the majority opinion. If somebody disagrees with me on that, I would be very happy to have a discussion and think through this. But I don't think I'm outside of the majority opinion taking that sort of a stance. So yeah, I think that fleshes out what I mean a little more about thinking abstractly and how that is a clear indication of personhood. And the evidence for this is just that human beings, as far as we know, are the only ones who can do things like this, who can think abstractly, and then also who can give of themselves, sacrifice their lives for even an enemy. So those aspects of intellect and will. And then I guess I would throw on kind of a defense of St. Bonaventure's third part of the soul, which could constitute personhood, which would be the aspect of the soul that he calls the memory, which is where there's vestiges, there's shadows of imprints, you could say, footprints of God on the person. So we could also argue that everyone has that God-shaped hole in their heart and needs to seek it. There's this longing in us for that ultimate being, right? So anyway, there we go. Hope that helps. Thanks. Real quick, please feel free to subscribe to any of my podcasts on any of the podcast players. Find me on YouTube. Please subscribe. Like me on Facebook, like the Catholicism Car channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there. Catholicism Car. And then I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support what I do at this podcast and this YouTube channel. And you can also support us on Anchor.fm. There's a support button there you click on. I also have links to all this on my website's support page at www.catholicisminthecar.com.